Part 29. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 281. Li Ju is the lowest ranking elder in Li Huo section. He is always polite to Li Mo when he sees him, and will even call him young sect master. But at this time, not only did he not say hello, he even used the Li Wo curse without saying a word. No matter how stupid Li Mo is, he knows that Zuyun is right. Li Huo sect has really changed. Even Li Tian may encounter unexpected events. You shouted, "Isn't this running?" Zuyun roared angrily, but suddenly thought of something and said, "Do you still have any spiritual stones on you? Give them all to me." "Yes, yes." Li Mo hurriedly gave all the remaining 100 or so spiritual stones on his body to Zuyun. He had almost finished cultivating everything he had on his body before. "That's all? Didn't you say you are very rich?" Zuyun himself didn't have much on his body. He was chased by the city guard earlier, and 30 self-destruct formations were deployed behind him. He only had more than 200 yuan on his body. Li Mo gritted his teeth and said, "I have been thinking about avenging you these past few days. I wish I could break through to the core formation stage immediately. I didn't know that these elders had rebelled, so I used spiritual stones to restore my spiritual power." "Who knew you were not dead?" Zuyun stared and said, "Didn't I tell you, when I come back to Li Wo sect to find you, what kind of revenge will you take?" "Yes, you told me. But you didn't tell me that you ran to Shiwanda mountain." "I saw the beast tide. There were so many monsters. Even if you didn't die in the hands of the city guard, you would still die in the hands of the city guard. In the hands of Ji Dankai. How do you expect me to believe that you can survive?" Li Mo also pushed back unceremoniously. He felt like he couldn't hold a breath in his heart and felt that all his efforts were in vain. Zuyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, "Who doesn't have the skills to save their lives when they go out? Otherwise, I will help you attract people stupidly." "Wait, you said there is a mountain of 100,000 mountains." Zuyun's expression was startled. "Isn't Shiwandashan the rumored hometown of Yayong? You do not know." Li Mo looked at Li Ju, who was chasing after him but couldn't catch up. He was so angry that his expression turned ferocious. He turned to Zuyun with a surprised look on his face. "The Chuzhu monks didn't know about Shiwandashan? Which corner did this come from?" "Nonsense, if I knew, where would I dare to run?" While controlling the flying boat, Zuyun took out a stack of Firebird talisman from his storage bag and handed it to Li Mo, saying, "Do you know how to use the talisman?" "Smash him." "Fellow Daoist Joe, brother Joe, I know how to use talismans, but these broken talismans of yours, can they break through the alchemy stage?" Li Ju was in the early stage of pill formation, but he was about to enter the middle stage, and Li Mo knew it very well. Although he didn't recognize Zuyun's talisman, he could feel that it was an intermediate talisman. He secretly thought in his heart, "The intermediate talisman can hurt people up to the stage of pill formation, I believe it. Just let you smash him." "Who said we want to smash him to death? We only have 300 to 400 spiritual stones in our bodies, so we can't fly far." Zuyun rolled his eyes. When he was about to run away, he thought that Lju could easily take out 1,000 spiritual stones, so if he thought about running far away, he would always use up Lju's spiritual power. Unexpectedly, this fool thought he was dead and used up all the spiritual stones. These few hundred pills can allow the flying boat to travel 3,000 to 5,000 miles at most. Moreover, he was still following him. If Zuyun wanted to protect him, he would naturally not be able to use his trump card. Any Chaos Palm self-destruction formation is inconvenient to use. Then you can only use these Firebird charms. The key is that if Li Mo had doubts, he would have told him that the Zhaofu sect in Ye is who bought it. How to smash it? Li Mo thought that this would consume some of Li Ju's spiritual power, but he couldn't help it, so he had to ask, smash them one by one, or smash them all at once. As you like. Zuyun responded and concentrated on controlling the flying boat. The Firebird talisman was made of the spiritual power purified from the fire spirit beads. He didn't know how powerful it was. But he didn't care. If he could succeed at least, Li Ju would still be afraid if he couldn't succeed. Then I'll start. Li Mo pinched out a talisman, poured some spiritual energy into the bed, and then suddenly threw it at Li Ju. In an instant, a burst of fire appeared from the talisman. Before Li Mo could blink, the fire turned into a firebird and flew towards Li Ju. Huh! Zuyun was surprised, so fast. What's so fast? Li Mo was not familiar with the talisman and didn't know it was the Firebird talisman. I said this bird flies so fast. The Firebird did not turn into a fire phoenix, but both the speed of its formation and the speed of its flight were much faster than when it was originally filled with its own fire spiritual power. As soon as he finished speaking, Firebird bumped into Li Ju head-on. A pill-forming period, but he didn't escape. Zuyun's eyes lit up. But Li Ju quickly came out of the flames. The momentum was slightly weaker, but he was not seriously injured. The attack strength is still at the level of the foundation building stage. If you use the super powerful Firebird talisman, you may not be able to hit Li Ju. After Zuyun made a comparison in his mind, he said to Li Mo, I leave this Li Ju to you, you should hit him at the right time. I don't believe it. After hitting dozens of them, I can't hit him scared. I don't know if this Firebird talisman made Li Ju feel afraid or if it really had an impact on Li Ju. Zuyun faintly noticed that Li Ju's speed seemed to be slower. But no matter what, after the distance was widened, the two of them relaxed a little and started chatting. By the way, fellow Daoist Joe, how did you escape from that pill-forming period? Li Mo threw another Firebird talisman, forcing Li Ju some distance again, and turned around to ask. How else can I escape? Find a place to hide, and then find a way to kill him. Zuyun originally wanted to say that he also drove a flying boat, but when the words came to his lips, he changed his mind again. The city guard is in the elixir formation period, and Li Ju is also in the elixir formation period. Now that he hasn't even gotten rid of Li Ju, how could he possibly get rid of the city guard? Simply, Zuyun said it openly. What? Did you kill the city guard? Li Mo shook his hand and almost hit Zuyun's face with the Firebird talisman, but immediately he showed an excited look and said, then do you want to lure Li Ju to Shiwen Mountain and then kill him too? Got him. Zuyun almost wanted to scold his mother. What about a pill-forming period? Do you think it is a chi refining period? Can you stop being so ignorant? Kill me, even if I can kill, I still have to find a chance to kill. Zuyun was angry and funny, but a good place suddenly came to his mind. But before that, he had to ask Li Mo first. By the way, do you, Liwo sect, have any grudge against Scarlet Flame City? Li Mo was puzzled and said, why do you ask that? Our Liwo sect always keeps a low profile, and those who have enmity with us are only a few large sects in the west of Chuzhu. If you don't have any grudge, why do you act like a different person in Xian City and can't say more than 3 words in a sentence? Zuyun had veins popping out on his forehead. He felt that he had been completely misled by Li Mo. My dad told me to stop talking to strangers. When Li Tian was mentioned, Li Mo's expression suddenly darkened. He knew that something must have happened to Li Tian, and he either died in Li Huo sect or escaped to who knows where. But based on his understanding of Li Tian, he was probably dead. Zuyun originally wanted to curse a few words, but seeing Li Tian like this, he couldn't bear to speak. Fortunately, it has been confirmed that Liwo sect has nothing to do with Scarlet Flame City, so we can run to Scarlet Flame City. Liwo sect is only 1,000 miles away from Scarlet Flame City. With the speed of the flying boat flying at full speed, it will not take more than a few hours to reach Scarlet Flame City. As long as they keep a certain distance from Lju and allow themselves to enter Xian City, then the two of them can survive. As for whether we can kill Lju, we'll tell when the time comes. Thinking of this, Zuyun immediately said to Li Mo, "Friend Li Dao, we can survive, but the premise is that you pay attention to the distance between Li Ju and us, and keep at least 1 mile away." Real? Lju's eyes regained a little sparkle. Of course, when have I ever lied to you? Zuyun vowed, and Li Mo was indeed an important part of this plan. It was impossible for him to rush directly to Xian City in a flying boat. With Tang Tiangong's formation skills, the large formation outside would most likely destroy Zuyunzhou and kill people. So after arriving outside Xian City, he had to put away the flying boat. Then this time difference can only be smoothed out by the distance from the wine. After hearing that he could survive, Li Ju cheered up and controlled the frequency of using the Firebird Talisman. When they had the last Firebird Talisman left in their hands, Xian City appeared in front of their eyes. Li Mo, get ready, we are going into the city. Zuyun's expression did not relax, but instead he reminded him more solemnly. Good. While Li Mo responded, he threw out the last Firebird Talisman. At the same time, Zuyun gave a low shout and put the flying boat away. But as soon as the two landed, several guards rushed up to stop them with their own magic weapons. Another mid-level pill-forming person said coldly, "The entrance fee is 20 spirit stones." As his words fell, both of them felt the murderous aura from behind getting closer and closer. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 282. Ha ha ha, you actually want to enter Xian City? You're dead now. Li Ju, who originally thought they would escape into Xian City, showed a cruel smile after seeing this scene. He had already thought about it, first slapping Zuyun to death, and then capturing Li Mo alive. But at this moment, he saw Zuyun pulling Li Mo's hand and suddenly jumping to the side. Li Ju was a little confused for a while. If he let them rush into Xian City, he might still be afraid. But outside the city, that's the King of Heaven, and he can't control what he does. Could it be that they don't have the entrance fee? Zuyun didn't care what Li Ju and the guards were thinking. While holding Li Mo, he whispered, "Close your eyes." Li Mo subconsciously closed his eyes, and felt a great force coming from his hands. Although he didn't know where to go, he knew that this was not the direction of the city gate. He immediately screamed, "Daiojo, where are you going?" But Zuyun ignored him at all, and concentrated his spiritual power on his feet. In a few steps, he bypassed several guards and then jumped onto the city wall. Break into Xian City. Whether it was the guards or Li Ju who was chasing behind, this idea popped up in their minds, thinking, where did this fool come from? Didn't he know that Xian City was covered by a large formation? It's impossible to get through. And Li Ju was even more happy in his heart, this was easy to catch. The guards didn't move, and they also stared at Zuyun using a strange step to climb the city wall, and then a white light came out of his body, and then the two of them climbed directly onto the city wall. Li Ju was slightly stunned. He had been to Xian City, so he naturally knew that Xian City was protected by a large formation. Unless Xian City took the initiative to withdraw the formation, it would be impossible to enter the city. But he didn't know to what extent the formation protected the city, and whether the city wall was also protected by the formation. So when he saw the two people standing on the city wall, he turned his right hand and gathered his spiritual power to grab Zuyun. Boom! With a loud bang, Li Ju's spiritual power hit the city defense formation. Who dares to attack the Xian City formation? This loud noise finally shocked the guards back to their senses. The leader of the middle stage of the Jindan couldn't help but get angry and shouted at Li Ju, then jumped up and slapped Li Ju. The protective formation of the city was colorless and invisible. Li Ju also took on the recoil of the city defense formation without any preparation. At this time, he was still dissolving it when he heard the shouts of the city guards. At the same time, there was a majestic spiritual power rushing towards him. Suddenly, Li Ju dared not think too much, and quickly controlled his fire cloud magic weapon to block the attack from the city guard. The spiritual power quickly bombarded the magic weapon, and the huge bombardment force directly overturned the man and the magic weapon. The duty of ordinary guards is to protect the city gate and pay half of the entrance fee to open the gate of the city defense formation. The city guard in the Jindan stage naturally teaches those who come here to make trouble. So he didn't hold back at all, and anything that happened would be counted on Tang Tiangong's head. The city guard saw Li Ju falling from mid-air, and bullied him again, flipping his hand and slapping him again. Although Tang Tiangang is his backer, if he doesn't handle it well, he will be punished. Daiyu, I am the elder of the Liwo sect. When Li Ju received the first blow, he secretly said that it was not good. Although he managed to bear it with the help of the magic weapon, the blood in his body was surging at this time, and the city guard was in the middle stage. It won't take a few moves, and he will definitely die. Who is your fellow deist? If you dare to attack the Xian city formation, you will be sentenced to death. The city guard did not hold back, and his exquisite palm style was like a storm, suppressing Li Ju so much that he could not raise his head at all. On the city wall, Zhu Yun hurriedly said to Li Mo, "You go to Tang's wine house and wait for me, I will go there later." Fellow deist Zhou, are you going to kill Li Ju? Li Mo's heart trembled, and he said hurriedly. He remembered what Zhu Yun said before, taking the opportunity to kill the city guard who was chasing him. At this time, Li Ju was at a disadvantage. Not necessarily, you go first, and we will talk about it later. Zhu Yun said in a deep voice, revealing that there was no doubt in his words. Li Mo was silent for a while, and then said, "Fellow deist Zhou, don't hold back." After that, he jumped off the city wall and rushed towards the direction of Tang's wine house without looking back. Zhu Yun breathed a sigh of relief, and then he focused on the fight not far away. To be honest, it was the first time he saw the fighting style of the Jindan stage. With every move, he could cause spiritual power to surge. Even though Li Ju was suppressed and had no chance of turning over, every move was extremely exquisite, which made Zhu Yun fascinated and extremely envious. The control of spiritual power by the Jindan stage is as easy as a finger, which is simply not comparable to the foundation building stage. Zhu Yun stood on the city wall, muttered to himself, and stared at the two people more intently. He found that as long as he was distracted a little, his eyes could not keep up. Li Ju was beaten while calling out to the Liwo sect, but the city guard did not give him face at all. Finally, Li Ju was unable to resist the attack of the city guard and was knocked down from mid-air and hit hard on the ground. At the same time, the city guard also landed and stepped on Li Ju's chest. Then he took Li Ju's storage bag from the air and said viciously, "Remember, the one who killed you today is the city guard of Xian City. If there is a next life, you will seek revenge on Xian City." After saying that, he suddenly gathered his spiritual power on his feet, raised his feet slightly, and stepped heavily on Li Ju's lower back. Boom! This kick seemed to be nothing mysterious, but all his spiritual power flowed to Li Ju's golden elixir. But how could a Jindan stage not have the ability to save his life? In addition, no matter how strong the city guard was, he was not much stronger than him. Li Ju, who had long known that the city guard would kill him, immediately abandoned his body at this moment and used the method of Jindan leaving his body. The explosion sounded, and with the city guard as the center, black and brown dust quickly rose from the ground and swallowed the two directly. But a golden light came out from it and fled into the distance. Zhu Yun saw it clearly, and the city guard could naturally find it. He just took a cold look, then returned to the city gate, and did not chase him out. Master Zhu is so powerful, why don't you chase that golden elixir? On the side, some ordinary guards in the foundation building stage immediately came up and said with a charming smile. The golden light of the golden elixir was particularly conspicuous in the dust and smoke. Everyone saw it. Not only Zuyun on the city wall. Trouble, anyway, I destroyed his body and took his storage bag. Even if he wants to trouble me, he must have practiced for hundreds of years. The city guard said with a smile, and then shouted to a group of cultivators who had been queuing for a long time, "See, this is the consequence of attacking the Xian city formation. If anyone wants to try, that's your fate." His eyes swept over, with endless majesty. Everyone lowered their heads, including some Jindan stage. It's not that they are afraid of the city guard. But there is no need to disturb his interest at this time. During the fight just now, Li Ju reported the name of Liwo sect and almost died. Presumably, even if they have a background force, they will not be taken seriously by the people of Xian City. Seeing that these people were lining up obediently, the other guards then quietly surrounded the city guard and said, "Master Zhu, why did that man just rush directly into the formation? And we didn't catch him. You know shit." The city guard glared at him and said, "The formation set up by City Lord Tang cannot be broken by anyone in the entire Chuzhu, otherwise how could Xian City be able to gain a foothold here? Those two guys are ordinary, but they can rush directly into the city without any obstruction from the city defense formation. Maybe they are the descendants of City Lord Tang." Descendants of City Lord Tang. Another guard was surprised and said, "Does City Lord Tang have descendants?" The city guard looked at he showed contempt and said, "City Lord Tang is also a human being, why can't he have descendants? Although no one has ever entered or left his city lord's mansion, how many people do you know? Besides, the reason why I guessed that they were the descendants of City Lord Tang is because..." Speaking of this, the city guard showed contempt again and said, "Many years ago, City Lord Tang once asked me to go to Yezhu to do business and inquire about people with the surname Tang. What does this mean?" The guards suddenly realized that it was no wonder that the two foundation building cultivators had rushed into the city, but Lord Zhu did nothing else after blowing up Li Ju's body. That's it? If they were outside, the city guard would not have too much communication with these foundation building cultivators, but they were all guarding the gate for Tang Tiangang, and they would see each other when they looked up and down, and they were also his subordinates, so they said a few more words. However, he didn't say one thing, that is, Zuyun came in a flying boat. Is this a magic weapon that ordinary foundation building cultivators can use? At this time, another person said, "By the way, Lord Zhu, I seem to have heard that the city guard, Lord Qin, went out a few days ago and did not return. Could it be that he also went to help Lord Tang with things?" Hearing this, Lord Zhu was stunned. Compared with other city guards, he had more exchanges with Tang Tiangang, and he and Tang Tiangang were relatively early. But it has been almost 100 years, and Tang Tiangang has not sent anyone out. How could someone go out again? He pondered for a moment and ordered his men, "You go and ask more about why he went out." "Yes, Lord Zhu." These foundation building period people are not stupid, and they immediately know that there must be another hidden story. And since Lord Zhu lowered his voice, if you help him find out the news, you may get a reward. When these men returned to their respective posts with smiles on their faces, the city guard said secretly, "That guy named Qin is very greedy for money. He has done a lot of extortion outside the city. I have also heard about him following people out of the city to rob treasures. He has not returned for a few days. I am afraid that..." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 283. Zhu Yun had been standing on the wall. He thought that the people guarding the city today would definitely come over to question him. He was ready to take out the 10,000 array order, but he didn't expect that the guards headed by the Jindan stage would treat him as if he didn't exist. This made Zhu Yun feel a little strange. When he left Xian City that day, the 10,000 array order emitted a white light, which attracted the attention of the city guard, and then left a mark on him, and finally let him escape all the way to the Shiwen Mountains. But when he entered the formation, the 10,000 array order also glowed. Why was there nothing wrong? However, Zhu Yun naturally hoped that it would be better to have less trouble than more. Even if he had the 10,000 array order in hand, he could use Tang Tiangong's name to shock the people in the city. But facing a Jindan stage, Zhu Yun was still a little unsure. This was one of the reasons why he asked Li Mo to go to Tang's Inn first. As for the other reason, Zhu Yun wanted to kill people to silence them. Li Ju's Jindan was obviously afraid that the city guard would kill him, so he took a detour and turned a corner of the city wall before running wildly in one direction. Zhu Yun saw that the city guard and others ignored him, so he took a step and ran on the city wall. The footsteps were loud, which immediately attracted the attention of Lord Zhu. He stared at them for a few seconds, then smiled at the guards. "See, my guess was right. If it weren't for the descendants of City Lord Tang, who would dare to run on the city wall like this? Lord Zhu is still amazing. Yes, we are far behind and can't even think of it. Fortunately, Lord Zhu reminded me, otherwise if I went up to catch people, I would offend City Lord Tang." Listening to a group of subordinates flattering him again, Lord Zhu was very pleased. He retracted his gaze and continued to look at the monks queuing up, paying the entrance fee one by one and then entering the city. Zhu Yun wished no one would pay attention to him. He ran all the way to the corner of the city wall and then quickly jumped down. Along the way, he not only jumped down the city wall, but also jumped outside the city defense formation. Then, he sacrificed the middle-grade spirit sword and chased after Li Ju's golden elixir with the sword. From escaping to chasing, Li Ju never thought that he would end up in such a situation. Seeing that Zhu Yun dared to chase him, the resentment in his heart almost made him explode. He couldn't figure out why Zhu Yun rushed into the formation with Li Mo safely, and he not only failed to catch them, but also had his body destroyed by the city guard. When have I, Li Ju, suffered such a great humiliation? Want to kill me? Humph. Li Ju thought of countless ways to torture Zhu Yun to death, but unfortunately he only had the golden elixir left at this time. Even if his realm was still higher than Zhu Yun, he was restricted by the lack of a body and could not make an effective attack. The only means was to use the golden elixir to hit. As long as he could break Zhu Yun's stanchion, he would be considered the winner. Unfortunately, Li Ju didn't dare to do that, because it was too close to Xian City. If the city guard attacked again, he was afraid that even his golden elixir would have to stay here. Li Ju thought for a while and felt that if he flew at full speed, Zhu Yun might not be able to catch up. It would be better to slow down a little and lead Zhu Yun away from Xian City, so that he could take revenge at that time. Thinking of this, Li Ju really flew slower, keeping a constant speed at a distance that Zhu Yun could see but couldn't catch up. He also decided in his heart to use the method of golden elixir possession to possess Zhu Yun's body. He knew why he couldn't catch up with Zhu Yun and Li Mo at that time. It was that flying boat. As long as he took this kid's body, wouldn't everything he had belong to him? Instead of staying in Luo sect and being a chores elder who was ordered around by all the Jindan stage, it would be better to take away Zhu Yun's treasures and find a place to hide and practice with concentration, which would also be considered to be out of the control of Luo sect. In the past few days, he knew more clearly how much the Luo sect had changed after Li Tian's death. The elder opened the sect treasury and took out some resources to distribute. Unfortunately, as the last elder, he could not get much. The feeling of injustice also emerged at that time. However, Li Ju did not know that his slow speed just fulfilled Zhu Yun's wish. If Li Ju escaped at full speed, Zhu Yun would have no choice but to chase him with the flying boat. This old guy just ran for his life. Why did he deliberately slow down when I chased him? Do you think I have never seen how fast the golden elixir is when it leaves the body? Zhu Yun saw through Li Ju's thoughts at a glance, and secretly kept a watchful eye. At the same time, he also decided that as long as Li Ju's speed changed, he would immediately take action and seize the initiative. He flew nearly 100 miles with the golden elixir, and Xian City was no longer visible behind him. Li Ju also began to look for a suitable opportunity, but unfortunately the terrain here was flat, and there was no terrain he could use except for some cracks in the ground. Seeing Zhu Yun chasing him closely, Li Ju thought about the previous fight that had consumed a lot of his spiritual power. Although there was still a lot left in the golden elixir, in order to prevent the night from getting too long and dreaming, Li Ju decided to kill Zhu Yun here. Thinking of this, Li Ju flew downwards. In order to make Zhu Yun feel that his spiritual power was running out, Li Ju even slowed down a little. He didn't know that Zhu Yun had already been prepared. I want to make a move, but there is nothing underground. Wait, are we going to go into the cracks in the ground? Zhu Yun narrowed his eyes. There were occasional flames coming out of the cracks in the ground, but he was not afraid. But the problem is that the cracks in the ground can't accommodate him at all, but Li Ju's golden elixir can. If you really want to get into the cracks in the ground, that'll be easy. Zhu Yun suddenly sneered in his heart, but pretended to be ignorant and followed Li Ju as he flew downwards. Humph, you still dare to chase me? All the cracks in the ground in Chuzhu are connected, and the ground fire here is far away from the ground. When you guard the crack here, I will get out of the crack on the other side and seize it. It's your body. Li Ju thought that Zhu Yun was completely confused by him, and was overjoyed. He even began to fantasize about where he could hide and practice after taking Zhu Yun's body. Although it will take a long time for the golden elixir to completely occupy the body, it can affect the body and give him instructions. Feeling that with Zhu Yun's speed, it was impossible to catch up with him when he reached the crack in the ground, Li Ju slowed down again and maintained an extremely delicate distance. When he happened to get into the crack in the ground, Zhu Yun just landed on the ground. Boy, why are you chasing me so hard? Li Ju's Jindan hid in the cracks in the ground and shouted angrily on purpose. This move was also to confuse Zhu Yun. Ha ha ha, why, you are only allowed to chase me, but I am not allowed to kill you. Zhu Yun was happy to cooperate in the acting. He spent a lot of time in the volcanic zone, and even though he didn't know how Li Ju acted after hiding in the cracks in the ground, he didn't care. He only needs to know that Li Ju wants to kill him, and the only way to do it is to rely on the golden elixir to hit him. Boy, that's too much. Li Ju cursed loudly and shrank the golden elixir inward a little, trying to make Zhu Yun think that he was scared. Too much bullying, Zhu Yun looked sarcastic and said, you chased me all the way from Liwo sect to Xian City. Why didn't you say that you bullied others too much? If it hadn't been for the help of the city guard, I might have died long ago. Outside Xian City. Boy, now you can't do anything to me, and I can't do anything to you. How about we break up, you walk your sunny way, and I cross my single plank bridge? Li Ju's tone became weaker. But how could Zhu Yun believe it? It's not easy to bully a person in the core formation stage. This is something I can't even think about in the foundation stage. It's impossible for me to let you go. Unless you come up with some benefits, but, look at your nakedness, it looks like I can't take it out, so I thought about it and decided to kill you. Zhu Yun irritated Li Ju little by little in order to make him lose his mind and then make his ultimate move. These words simply hit the point of Li Ju's pain. He didn't have many cultivation resources in Li Huo sect, and after cooperating with a group of elders to kill Li Tian, he waited until the great elder opened the sect's treasury. As a result, a little bit of resources were allocated. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. In addition, he pursued Zuyun and Li Mo all the way to no avail, and his body was destroyed. He ended up in such an embarrassing situation, and Zuyun even brought it up in front of his face. This was simply exposing his scars. He was so angry that his whole golden elixir was trembling, but thinking that he was going to take Zuyun's body now, he had to endure the harsh words, so he cursed and quietly looked for a connecting crack in the ground, planning to go around it. A sneak attack on Zuyun. As for Zuyun, when he saw Li Ju stop talking, he secretly thought that this old guy must be looking for an opportunity to take action, and it was time for him to take action too. He sneered in his heart and quickly formed a connection with the fire Lingzhu. Fen Tianyan, rushed down and burned the golden elixir. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 284. From the beginning to the end, Zuyun never thought of using other means. Now, the only means he can use to kill Jindan stage, besides Chaos Palm, is self-destruction formation. The disadvantages of Chaos Palm are beyond doubt. At this time, he cannot completely lock the position of Jindan. If the palm misses, he will be out of spiritual power and may be killed by Li Ju. Although the power of the self-destruction formation is great and the consumption of spiritual stones is very small, Zuyun cannot guarantee whether the explosion force will hit the ground. And after triggering the self-destruction formation, he has to run at least 1 mile away. This also loses the opportunity to determine whether Li Ju's Jindan was blown to death. Only burning heaven flame is the most suitable at this time. Spiritual fire is the nemesis of Jindan and Yuanying. Without the protection of the body, whether it is Jindan or Yuanying of Yuanying ancestor, as long as it touches, it will be seriously injured. Depending on the intensity and burning time of the spiritual fire, it will cause different damage. And burning heaven flame is heavenly fire. The most important thing is that the burning sky flame is not restricted by the terrain, and it is even more suitable for this kind of crack. It would be fine if Li Ju did not enter the crack, but he hid in the crack and gave up the advantage of the flexibility of the golden elixir. As Zuyun gave the order, the burning sky flame suddenly rushed out from Zuyun's heart and rushed straight into the crack. As long as there is fire, for the burning sky flame, it is like his home court. In an instant, he locked the position of the golden elixir and rushed towards Li Ju without hesitation. Hey, this fire, no, it's spiritual fire. Li Ju was still searching for the place where the crack was connected. Feeling the boundless fire attack, he subconsciously thought it was the jumping ground vein fire. But the power of the burning sky flame's heavenly fire made him immediately aware of the danger. Run! An instinctive terror arose in the golden elixir, and Li Ju's heart and gall were about to burst. If you touch the spiritual fire, you will be injured, and if you touch it too much, you will die. He originally practiced the fire mantra. Although he had never had spiritual fire, he knew how terrible the damage of spiritual fire to the golden elixir was. At this time, he had no time to snatch Zuyun's body. He could only flee frantically along the crack in the ground. But how could his speed compare to the burning sky flame under the ground? After just a few breaths, half of the round golden elixir was burnt. Wow! Li Ju was sad and painful, and shouted loudly. Running down was not a solution. At this moment, he could only snatch the boy's body. He thought that this spiritual fire was so intelligent that its grade was at least earth fire. Since he did not attack Zuyun, he must be afraid of being subdued by Zuyun. As long as he occupied the boy's body, he could escape. Wait until this real person completely controls the boy's body, then come and take you. Li Ju gritted his teeth, and finally found a crack leading to the ground, and rushed forward quickly. Burning sky flame would never let him get away, so he quickly caught up with him. He burned a little bit of his golden elixir, and Li Ju cried out in agony. But thinking that he would die without a burial if he didn't run, he could only bear to remember the hatred, and took many detours to increase his speed to the extreme. even occasionally encountering things like ground fire and magma that might hurt him to some extent. He just went through them directly. Compared with burning sky flame, these injuries are almost negligible. Finally, Li Ju saw a glimpse of blue sky through the crack in the ground. At this time, he had no idea how far he was from the crack in the ground where he had hidden before. But he believed that as long as he rushed out of the crack in the ground, burning sky flame would definitely not dare to chase him out. Wow! Li Ju could finally fly at full speed. He went straight through the crack in the ground and instantly found the place where Zhu Yun was standing. Boy, prepare to die. He paused for a moment, grinned in his heart, and was about to chase him, but he didn't expect that the burning sky flame would rush out from under the crack in the ground without any delay and swallow him in an instant. Ah! The fanatical fire power continued to burn his golden elixir. Li Ju felt the severe pain from the depths of his soul and roared out uncontrollably. Hysteria! And Zhu Yun also turned back suddenly, only to find that Li Ju was actually dozens of steps away from him. So that's what you were thinking. Fortunately, I used the burning sky flame to chase him. Zhu Yun's eyes were stern, but he didn't move forward. He knew that the burning sky flame could burn Li Ju's golden elixir. After a while, as Li Ju's painful roar gradually weakened and then disappeared, the burning sky flame also sent a message that the mission was completed. Zhu Yun finally breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know how many Jindan stage he had killed, but he had to say that Li Ju was the easiest one. Of course, there was also the reason that Li Ju only had one golden elixir left, but more of it was Li Ju's contempt. He thought that he could hide in the cracks in the ground and make a feint to the east and attack the west, and he would be fine. Little did he know that Zhu Yun had always been a suspicious person. If he was not absolutely sure, he would definitely run away first. Fen Tianyang, we should go back. Zhu Yun waved his hand, and Fen Tianyang quickly flew back and retracted into the fire spirit pearl on his heart. He patted his chest gently to show encouragement, then took out the spirit sword and set off to fly towards Xian city. The city guard must have recognized me. It's not right for me to go through the city gate or the city wall. It seems that I can only go in through another city gate. Zhu Yun was extremely cautious. Although the city guard did not come forward to ask at that time, who knows what he was thinking. If a city guard can leave the city to chase after him, who can keep the city guard from doing it? Thinking this way all the way, Zhu Yun flew to the east gate of Xian city and landed. On the way, he also stuffed the 10,000 array order into the Dao glass mirror. He didn't dare to put the storage bag, because he was afraid that Tang Tiangong's 10,000 array order was too strong, and the storage bag could not isolate the connection between the order and the formation. After landing, Zhu Yun joined the cultivators queuing at the east gate. Seeing that it was a cultivator in the late stage of foundation building, and he came on a sword, some cultivators with relatively weaker strength kept a little distance from him. Zhu Yun didn't care at all. He prepared 10 spirit stones, entered the city calmly, and then quickly rushed to Tang's wine house. He didn't want to stay in Xian city for too long, lest Tang Tiangang look for him. Little did he know that at this time, Tang Tiangang was sitting in the main hall of his city lord's mansion with an expressionless face. In front of him, countless array patterns were floating, forming a compass-shaped array. Just before, there were still flashes of light in the formation. But suddenly, the light disappeared. This kid, after leaving the city, first went to the 10,000 mountains. He also disappeared for a long time before, and then appeared out of thin air from the 10,000 mountains. Then he went to the Liwo sect, and then ran back to Xian city. But he lost his trace outside the city. He muttered to himself, frowning. It is true that this kid returned the explanation of the formation to me, but his whereabouts are so strange, and the light representing the 10,000 formation order disappears and appears from time to time. I am afraid he has a space treasure. If this treasure can hold a large number of monsters, I can send someone to Wanjian Mountain and set up a formation on it. Isn't this beast tide much more reliable than using a teleportation array? A gleam of light flashed in Tang Tiangong's eyes, and then he left the hall and walked towards the hut engraved with the teleportation array. A moment later, he appeared in a mysterious hut. Lord Tang. With a call, more than 10 strong men at the peak of the late Jindan stage stood up in the small supporting layer. No need to be polite. Tang Tiangang said lightly, help me find someone who is at the late foundation stage. He may be in Xian City or outside Xian City. Tell him to come and see me. If he resists, you can destroy him, but remember not to take his life. Another voice sounded, Lord Tang, what is the reward this time? Humph. Tang Tiangang snorted coldly and said, if this is done, this lord will eliminate the sequelae of the 10,000 demons art on you and let you go. The hut was suddenly very quiet. For a long while. Thank you, Lord Tang. When the voice faded, the array pattern flashed in the hut, and Tang Tiangang had teleported away again. On the ground, a piece of white paper with Zhu Yun's face was left. Everyone, do you think that Tang Logu will really let us go? I don't know. But I think that since he wants to let us go, it means that we are no longer useful. I guess so. I'm tired of being ordered around by him. If he doesn't let me go this time, even if I become a demon, I will fight him to the death. He, Tang Logu has boundless attainments in formation, and he never trusts anyone. Do you think you can hurt him even a hair if you fight to the death? Instantly, the wooden house was quiet again. Until the voice at the beginning sounded, let's go. No matter what, if we don't do it, we will still be imprisoned here. If we do it, there is still a glimmer of hope. The door of the wooden house opened, and more than a dozen monks of the same realm filed out. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 285. Although Zuyun wanted to take Li Mo and leave directly, he was not in a hurry after entering the city, walking slowly on the street like an ordinary casual cultivator. It won't attract other people's attention. He didn't know that a group of monks who were almost halfway into the nascent soul stage were already searching for him. However, Xian City does not allow the release of spiritual consciousness to find people, and the wooden house is far away from Zuyun. After walking for about half an hour, Zuyun finally arrived at Tang's restaurant. But before he entered, he saw Li Mo sitting at the corner of the alley next to the restaurant with an embarrassed look on his face. Fellow Daoist Li, didn't I ask you to go in and wait? Zuyun thought to himself, luckily it's not night time. If there is a tide of beasts, you, Li Mo, will become the beast's ration. Hearing Zuyun's voice, Li Mo was overjoyed at first, and then said with a smile, fellow Daoist Joe, isn't this, I gave you all the spiritual stones. I have no food in my pocket, and I feel panic. Zuyun suddenly realized that he had asked him to take all the spirit stones on the flying boat. He couldn't help but smile awkwardly and said, okay, let's go. The south gate was closed, and he came in through the east gate. Zuyun decided to leave through the west gate. Fortunately, the west gate is not too far away. It is about the same distance as the east gate. He can leave the city in half an hour at most. Huh? You're already here, why don't you stay one night before leaving? I'm exhausted. Li Mo stared and said, as the former young master of Li Huo sect, when had he ever suffered so much? Now I just want to get a room, find a bed, and practice. Zuyun said helplessly, I want to stay here, but I'm afraid that I'll be fine when I come here and I won't be able to go back. Li Mo didn't know that Zuyun was afraid of Tang Tiangang in the city, but he had known Zuyun for several days and had great trust in him. Even though he was exhausted physically and mentally, he still agreed. Then where are we going? My home is gone. Li Mo said sadly. Just take it one step at a time. It sounds like I have a family. Zuyun was amused, but when he thought of his situation, he couldn't laugh immediately. You are right, take it one step at a time. Chuzhu is so big, where is home? I must avenge my father. I must take back the Liwo sect that belongs to my home. He didn't know which of Zuyun's words stimulated him, and Li Mo suddenly cheered up. The two of them were talking quietly as they walked, just like ordinary monks, and walking towards the east gate. It was impossible to meet anyone else who had seen them. By the way, fellow Daoist Li, did you know that there are people in the Liwo sect who draw talismans and make elixirs? While Zuyun distracted Li Mo, he decided to inquire about Sun Suanhua. Do you think, if you draw the talisman, I won't recognize your fast bird talisman? Li Mo looked at Zuyun as if he were an idiot. Quick bird talisman. Zuyun was confused by this title. Yes, that firebird flies so fast that it can't even dodge Lju's pill-forming stage. It's really powerful. Do you still have it on you? Li Mo actually extended his hand to Zuyun unceremoniously. Zuyun was speechless and said, I gave you all 50, but you are right, it is indeed called the Quick Bird Talisman. Originally feeling a little disappointed that he could no longer find out the news about Sun Suanhua, Li Mo suddenly said, by the way, fellow Daoist Joe, you know that I came to Scarlet Flame City to find the formation master to break the formation. Do you know what formation to break? Zuyun shook his head, thinking that I knew nothing. Did I go there to break the formation? I came here to find my master. But before he figured out Sun Suanhua's situation, he couldn't reveal the news to anyone. Alas, Li Mo sighed and said, you don't know something. In fact, many years ago, Elder Li Yan came back from an outing and brought someone back. But suddenly that person disappeared, and then Elder Li Yan also started to become rich. There are so many elixirs, talismans, and the like that there is no end to them. You know, almost all of our Liwo sect elders have spiritual fire, but no one knows how to make elixirs. My father guessed that Elder Li Yan hid a person who could make alchemy in the sect, but there was no trace in the entire sect, so my father asked me to find the formation master, because he would only let me find the formation master if he set up a mysterious formation. He can't detect it even with his spiritual sense. Zuyun was shocked. This was the first time he heard the news. Before, he only guessed that Sun Suanhua had been to Liwo sect through Yan Lao's storage bag, and could not be sure whether he was still in the sect. Now after listening to Li Mo's words, it is confirmed without a doubt. Only an elder from Liju to the Dan formation stage would hunt down Li Mo, and from Li Mo's words, he learned that the entire sect had rebelled, and even his father might be dead. As a result, the method of using Li Mo as a talisman to sneak into the Li Fire sect has failed. Do you really want to ask Tang Tiangang to take action? Zuyun frowned all the way, and Li Mo mentioned that Li Tian might be dead, and was not interested in saying anything more. The two of them walked to the East City Gate in silence. It's just a coincidence. A person who was at the peak of the late stage of pill formation discovered Zuyun in an instant. He was responsible for walking around the city wall, and he happened to get here. In an instant, a huge pressure of spiritual consciousness was locked on Zuyun. Boy, don't move. A sound like thunder exploded in Zuyun's ears, and he immediately stopped. How horrible! Zuyun's forehead suddenly broke out with big beads of sweat, and he looked around with difficulty. However, he was surprised to find that no one noticed such a loud noise. Even Li Mo, who was walking with him, didn't notice anything unusual and just walked forward on his own. His mind was spinning so fast that he couldn't even guess the reason why he was looking for him during this period of pill formation. People from the Liwo sect? Impossible. Li Huo sect was also looking for Li Mo, but Li Mo was not affected at all. Is that Tang Tiangong's person? When I come to Chuzhu, These two forces are the only ones that have any intersection. By the way, there is also the mid-stage pill-forming person outside the city lord's palace who has been waiting for me to come out and kill me. Could it be his helper? Impossible. In the middle stage of pill formation, you need helpers to kill in the foundation stage. Are you kidding me? Then, there are only people from Tangtiangang. Zhu Yun's halt finally attracted the attention of some people, but those people just took a look and ignored him. Zhu Yun took a deep breath and whispered to Li Mo, who was not far in front of him, "Li Mo, don't look back, just go and leave me alone." After finishing speaking, Zhu Yun concentrated his mind and tried his best to withstand the pressure as much as possible. There was no hostility in the pressure, he could feel it. But he doesn't know if he takes out the flying boat and escapes, whether he can anger this pill-forming stage and lead him to take action. The most important thing is that he has no idea where he is during this period of pill formation, let alone where he should run. The last peak person who chased him was Tang Zhuyang. That time, with the help of the power of the confused sword formation, he was successfully sealed at the cost of Sun Qinyang's whereabouts. But in the end, he was still allowed to run away. Finally, above the sea, it was the giant turtle monster that bit Tang Zhuyang directly to death. Wait, monster. Although Chuzhu is close to the sea, it is thousands of miles away in the extreme south. This was what Li Mo told him, allowing Zhu Yun to roughly know his location. The three prefectures of Yunchuao and Yunchuao are adjacent to each other. But between Yunchu and Chu, there is a natural forest, known as the Forest of Confusion. 3 steps for a small formation, 5 steps for a large formation, so no one will come to Yunzhou from here. Even if they come, they will basically pass through the sea. The same is true for Yeyang, who was stronger than before. However, the people in Yunzhou did not know this news. Because they would never consider going to Chuzhu, but prefer to go to Yezhu. For the same reason, people from Chuzhu are not willing to come to this barren place like Yunzhou. Only monks like Li Dachan who dared not cross Yezhu would take a detour by water. These are not issues Zhu Yun is considering at this time. At this moment, his mind was filled with bloody images of the giant turtle biting Tang Zhuyang in one bite. If you are unable to fight, you can only borrow strength. Aren't there monsters in Shiwanda Mountain? Find the right opportunity and run to Shiwanda Mountain. Just after Zhu Yun made his decision, a startled shout came from the city gate. What a good boy, you actually hid outside the city. As soon as the words fell, another huge spiritual consciousness locked on his body. At the same time, murderous intention was like a substance, attacking Zhu Yun's neck. Zhu Yun was shocked and said something bad. If it's not coming sooner or later, why is it that at this time, the Danji period guarding outside the city lord's mansion is here? And it's a killer move. What to do? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 286. Zhu Yun knew that if he continued to stand, he would definitely die. In the flash of lightning, he immediately decided to use a talisman to block the blow, and then use the earth escape technique to escape. This is the only way at the moment. In front of him, Li Mo had also turned around, with a look of disbelief on his face. At first, when he heard Zhu Yun's words, he only knew that he must be in danger. But when he heard the loud shouts of the Danja period again, he already knew that Zhu Yun was facing the Danja period's attack alone for him again. He clenched his fists feebly. Even if he was at the peak of the late foundation establishment stage, he might break through to the core formation stage at any time, and he would not be able to help Zhu Yun out at this time. If you step forward, you will die. Li Mo looked at Zhu Yun in a daze as he reached out and took it out in his arms. He felt happy immediately. Fellow Deist Joe was indeed fellow Deist Joe. It seemed he had a trump card. But before he could react, there was another loud shout. You dare to touch the main people in Tang City? You are seeking death. As soon as the words fell, Zuyun felt that the pressure on his body had disappeared. Immediately afterwards, another loud noise came from behind. What followed was the scream of the pill-forming stage. Good opportunity. There are no restrictions on his actions at this time. Zuyun doesn't care to talk to Li Mo. If he takes him with him at this time, he will undoubtedly be a drag. Not only would it be harder for him to run away, Li Mo might also be implicated by him. He just winked at Li Mo, and then immediately recited the earth escape technique silently. I saw him shrinking and disappearing in the blink of an eye. But at this time, the screams of the sneak attack stopped. Where are the people? The spiritual consciousness that locked onto Zuyun swept back in an instant. When he found that there was no one there, he couldn't help but scream, and then the spiritual consciousness suddenly spread out in all directions. But nothing was found. He didn't notice at all that Zuyun Hui escaped from the underground. Senior, he seems to have gone underground. At this time, a city guard who was in the early stage of pill formation quickly came up and said. He heard that Zuyun was an important person in Tang City, so why would he hesitate? I also happened to see the moment when Zuyun used the unearthed escape technique. Earth escape spell. During this period of pill formation, his face froze, and then he withdrew his spiritual consciousness, and then rushed towards the ground. Not long after, he discovered Zuyun's position and couldn't help but smile ferociously. Boy, I thought you didn't dare to resist, but since you want to escape, don't blame me for being rude. Tang Tiangang just wanted to stay alive, so when someone attacked Zuyun, he would immediately take action, seriously injuring him in the middle of his pill formation. But seeing Zuyun running away now, how could he let him go? On one side, he locked onto Zuyun's position with his spiritual sense, but on the other side, he raised his head and roared. A high-pitched and deep voice, like the roar of a monster, rose into the sky, and with him as the center, it quickly enveloped the entire Scarlet Flame City. Then, his face turned cold and he said in a deep voice, "We are doing business in Xi'an City and there are many people waiting. Leave quickly." As soon as the words fell, everyone ran away. Obviously, it is impossible to enter the city here, and those who leave the city are even more afraid of being affected, so they run away quickly. Li Mo was extremely calm at this time, knowing that since Zuyun had escaped underground, he already had a chance to escape. Having been on Zuyun's flying boat, he knew very well the speed of the flying boat. However, he didn't know where Zuyun would go. For now, it's better to leave first. Thinking of this, Li Mo also relaxed a lot. He had an inexplicable trust in Zuyun, and like other monks who left the city, he quickly stayed away from the city gate. And beneath the ground, Zuyun was running the second level of the earth escape technique crazily, moving downwards. It wasn't that he didn't want to escape sideways, but that after being discovered by this monk at the peak of the late stage of pill formation, he was afraid that he would be caught directly if he got too close to the ground. Instead of doing this, it is better to go down as far as possible to escape from the range of his spiritual consciousness. But until he exhausted half of his spiritual power, the spiritual consciousness locked in his body followed his body closely like erosion to his bones. What to do? Zuyun felt that running like this was not an option. He was a little puzzled as to why he was discovered by spiritual consciousness even though he was completely integrated into the earth. Although he used the earth escape technique, from time to time, some earth vein fire and magma would burn his body. Just like Ju's golden elixir was hiding in the cracks of the ground. Moreover, the earth escape technique consumes far more spiritual energy than the fire escape Ju and water escape Ju, which Zuyun did not expect. Maybe it's because of the nature of the soil? Zuyun didn't know, and he didn't want to find out the difference at this time. No time. If that doesn't work, how about diving all the way down, diving into the magma and then using the fire escape technique? Zuyun frowned and thought, as he went deeper, the temperature around him became higher and higher. Leyline fire and magma also appear more frequently. Although to Zuyun, these injuries may be negligible, but if there are too many ants, they will kill him, and no matter how few, they will reduce his spiritual power consumption. Parallel movement is obviously not possible, and moving upwards will lead to death. But now, the only option is to continue downwards. Zuyun gritted his teeth and was about to continue going down, when suddenly an idea flashed in his mind. It's not enough to go all the way down. The consumption of spiritual power is too great. It's better, I move back to the Scarlet Flame City from the underground. When I enter the Scarlet Flame City during the Dan formation period, I will leave the range of the Scarlet Flame City. Immediately, Zuyun felt that this was a clever plan. Of course, the premise is that the city's protective formation will not even cover the ground. Moreover, in order to catch him at the peak of his late-stage pill formation, he also had the 10,000 formation order given by Tang Tiangang. Otherwise, if he wanders underground around the inside and outside of the city, he will have no choice but to run for his life. Just do what he said. Zuyun immediately changed direction and fled towards the bottom of the wall of Xian City. Hey, have you started moving sideways? On the ground, the peak person in the late stage of pill formation couldn't help but frown in confusion. In fact, his spiritual consciousness could not completely lock onto Zuyun. The reason why it can be accurately positioned is because Zuyun will leave some traces when moving in the soil. He used these traces to lock Zuyun. Strange, strange. Are you trying to confuse me on purpose? He muttered to himself, just standing there, all his mind on Zuyun, and then helplessly felt Zuyun escape directly below Scarlet Flame City. Want to go through the city gate on the other side? Childish. He snorted coldly and immediately rushed towards the city gate. At the same time, he threw 10 spiritual stones to the city guard and said, "Open the formation gate. When my companion comes, I will call him to find me." It will take a few breaths to open the array gate. Even with such a time lag, by the time he entered the Scarlet Flame City formation during the Dan formation period, Zuyun had already taken more than 100 steps along the city wall towards the south gate. As long as you move underground, you will leave traces. You are just in the late stage of foundation building, but you want to run away. With a look of contempt on his face, he quickly walked towards Zuyun. He felt that Zuyun was 100 feet deep from where he stood. Zuyun ignored it and continued to move forward. Another 30% of the spiritual power was consumed, leaving only the last 20%. And he also arrived at the corner of the city wall between the west gate and the south gate. You said the person you are looking for is under the ground. At this time, there were also more than 10 people from the Danji period standing directly above. Almost everyone in that cabin is here. Some monks in the city didn't know why and watched from a distance. They had never seen so many pill-forming periods come together at one time. That's right, if you put down your spiritual senses, you can find the traces left by this kid digging holes in the ground. There was a sarcastic smile on this Danja period's face. The others followed suit one after another. They were all of similar strength, and they soon found some differences that made them incompatible with others. Obviously, this is the trace left by Zuyun to escape Ju. Only. Why aren't you moving? One of them suddenly said that after his spiritual consciousness spread for a week, he found that there was no movement underground, and thought Zuyun had stopped. Not moving? Isn't that boy afraid that his spiritual power has been exhausted? If so, we can notify City Lord Tang and dig him out. That's right, a mere foundation establishment stage escaped under the eyes of so many of us in the core formation stage. In my opinion, we might as well just draw a block of tofu on the city wall and hit him to death. Ha ha ha, that's right. Hey, it moved again. At this time, a Danjiji suddenly laughed, and then discovered that Zuyun had used the earth escape technique again. Only this time, his direction changed. It's towards the outside of the city wall. Looking at the distance getting shorter, it must be that the spiritual power is not enough. One of them said. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone frowned again. Because Zuyun started to move towards the ground. This is. Everyone raised their heads and saw the thick city wall in front of them, and suddenly felt that something was wrong. They seemed to have been tricked by Zuyun. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzwan Xianxia. Chapter 287. Sure enough, after just a few breaths, their spiritual consciousness was blocked and they could no longer lock onto Zuyun's position. The people who secretly felt something was wrong all jumped onto the wall and immediately saw Zuyun stepping on the spiritual sword, facing them and flying away. We can't let him get away. Someone shouted, and they were about to chase Zuyun. But they never thought. The monk hit his head on the transparent city defense formation, and then fell back onto the city wall. Go and inform the city lord. In addition, you go out of the city gate. That kid only uses a flying sword, so his speed is not that fast. Another person quickly made plans and gave orders. I'll go find City Lord Tang. I'll chase him out of the city gate. I'll keep an eye on that kid here. They had been locked up together in the wooden house for many years, and were often threatened by Tang Tiangang to do things. They had a tacit understanding and quickly began to divide the work. It was about whether they could get rid of the sequelae of the 10,000 demons art, and even more about whether they could leave Xian City, so no one would neglect it, and they all flew at full speed. When Tang Tiangang learned that Zuyun had just left the city, his face was extremely gloomy. In the wooden house, he pondered for a moment and said, "This kid has been to Luo Sect and Shiwen Mountain before. It is estimated that he will go to these two places this time. You split into two groups and chase in two directions." As he said that, he took out two array plates from his arms and threw them out. This is an array plate that can be used for communication. It is engraved with arrays. Within 1,000 miles, you can communicate with each other. Thank you, Lord Tang. The eyes of the Jindan sage who came to report the news lit up. This is a good thing. And Tang Tiangang gave them these two things, which would undoubtedly solve a lot of troubles. After he took it, he stuffed it into his arms and left quickly. A group of Jindan stage cultivators immediately split into two groups, each carrying an array plate, and chased in two directions. Zuyun, on the other hand, had just changed his flying boat and was flying rapidly towards the 10,000 mountains. Originally, he wanted to do the same thing and set up a self-destructing chain formation. But after weighing the pros and cons, he decided to use the spirit stones on the flying boat. Because there were not many spirit stones. No more than 200. Too poor, it's really a pity to have too little money when you need it. Zuyun said with a wry smile, but these spirit stones were enough for him to reach the 10,000 mountains. He knew that those Jindan stage would definitely chase him. Just because the first Jindan stage who found him said that he was the person Tang Tiangang was looking for. After leaving Xian City for the first time, Zuyun did not communicate with Tang Tiangang, so why did he send a Jindan stage to find him in Xian City? While thinking, Zuyun remembered the 10,000 array order again. The reason why he threw the 10,000 array order into the Dao glass mirror was to avoid emitting white light when entering and leaving the city, thereby attracting other people's attention. Could it be that Tang Tiangang can locate the ones in order? Thinking of this, Zuyun frowned again. If this is true, then many things that he couldn't figure out can be explained. The only thing he didn't know was why Tang Tiangang suddenly wanted to catch him. And he sent so many Jindan masters. When he flew from underground to the top of the city wall, through the city defense formation, he naturally saw the frustrated look of the Jindan stage. Similarly, thanks to the barrier of the city defense formation, they could only go out from the city gate, allowing him to escape. After sorting out his suspicions and the course of events bit by bit, Zuyun was more certain that it must be related to the Wanzan order. Old man, I almost let him fool me. But, what is his purpose in catching me? Zuyun had already decided in his heart that he would never go to Xian City again. Otherwise, he would fall into a trap. Even if he went to Chuzhu, he couldn't even take out the Wanzan order, otherwise he would definitely find out where he was. Unless. Zuyun slapped his forehead and laughed out loud. I'm so stupid. Tang Tiangang is locating the 10,000 arrays order. Can't I just throw the 10,000 arrays order away? Moreover, if I want to throw it farther, I'm just going to run to the 10,000 mountains. Otherwise, throw it to the place where there are the most monsters in the 10,000 mountains. Thinking of this, Zuyun showed a meaningful smile. Although he didn't know the terrain of the 10,000 mountains. But generally, the deeper the place, the stronger and more monsters there are. My flying boat is fast enough, ordinary monsters can't catch up, right? Just throw it away at that time. After making the decision, Zuyun felt extremely relieved. Looking back, still no one chased after him, which made him more determined. The speed of the flying boat is comparable to that of the Jindan stage, and he was also flying at full speed. Even if those people chased, as long as he didn't slow down, they couldn't catch up at all. 20 or 30 miles away from Xian City. Fellow Daoist Joe, you are really good at playing. Li Mo frowned, feeling that his current situation was not much better than Zuyun's. His father was dead, and his family was gone. And he was penniless. Except for a few elixirs for cultivation, he didn't have a single spirit stone. There weren't many elixirs, and they were almost all used up when he was cultivating in the volcano. The most important thing was, he was not familiar with the terrain of Chuzhu. Outside of Liwo sect, he was most familiar with the volcanic belt. The next is Xian City. I have been there 3 times since I can remember. Finally, it is Shiwen Mountain. Fortunately, Li Mo remembered the direction to Shiwen Mountain. At that time, Li Tian took him to find Zuyun. Although he was anxious all the way, at least Li Mo did not fly by himself, so he would not remember it wrong. After coming out of the west gate of Xian City, Li Mo had made up his mind to go to Shiwen Mountain to find Zuyun. He did not dare to go back to the volcano belt, and it was even more impossible to go to Liwo sect. He circled around and headed towards Shiwen Mountain. However, his speed was much slower. When those Jindan stage people flew away from him one by one, Li Mo was suddenly startled and stopped. Did these Jindan stage people also guess that Brother Joe went to Shiwen Mountain? This, if I go there again, I will die again. Li Mo muttered to himself and finally made a difficult decision. Return to the volcano belt and continue to practice. Don't come out until you reach Jindan. Brother Joe, you have to hold on. Wanjian Mountain, in the forbidden area. Sun Qiniang had been sitting there for a long time. She even forgot the time. Jianba walked in from outside the restriction. Mountain Master, all the elders are back. Sun Qiniang raised her head, her eyes bloodshot. She looked like a mortal woman who had worked hard and stayed up late for many days without rest. Mountain Master? Didn't you say, to practice here? Jianba frowned and said. Sun Qiniang slowly got up, then forced a smile and said, well, I was stuck at a bottleneck and couldn't get enlightenment for a long time, so I haven't practiced and comprehended this matter. This was half true and half false. It was true that she hadn't practiced. Because she had been studying this formation, and now she had some ideas, and when she was about to try, she was interrupted by Jianba. Master, please forgive me for speaking frankly. It's not good for you to continue to consume your soul power like this. Why don't you go back and have a good sleep, or take some pills to nourish your soul? Sun Qinyang looked back at the formation and felt that even if she could really activate the formation at her current state, she would have no protection against danger. So she simply nodded and said, "Okay." As she spoke, she walked straight to the formation gate and went outside. The only formation she knew was the sword-confusing formation from Jian Tianming's memory. Although the teleportation formation and the sword-confusing formation are completely different. But she knew that all formations have formation eyes. She only needed to find the main formation eye and infuse spiritual power, and maybe she could be teleported out. After days of blind searching, she really found the difference. The center of this formation is where the main formation eye is. Combined with what Ergu told her at the time, Zuyun had been standing in the center of the formation and couldn't move, which made her feel extremely certain. The only question was whether this teleportation formation would teleport her to Zuyun's side. Sun Qinyang felt exhausted, but after leaving the battle formation, she pulled herself together and flew to the platform on the hilt. Jianba closed the battle formation door and followed closely. She received a notice from Elder Jianyi that all the elders would gather at the platform. Meet the Mountain Master. As Jianba walked into the crowd, everyone bowed down in unison. No need to be polite. Sun Qinyang waved her hand lightly, and Jianyi stood up and said seriously, reporting to the Mountain Master, "At this time, my Wanjian mountain has won a great victory, and the Haori sect surrendered without a fight. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 288. Sun Qinyang was stunned. Haori section. Surrendered. That's impossible. Even though Haori sect is now attacked by Wanjian mountain and Malun sect, it was a coexistence with Wanjian mountain in the past. How can it surrender just like that? What about Malun sect? Sun Qinyang asked. It's not that he cares about the life and death of these two sects. But he wants to know whether the current situation in Yeazhu will affect his search for Zuyun. Only a few elders of Malun sect are alive, and they have all retreated into the Juhao mountains. Jianyi's eyes were shining, and he said, "Mountain Master, Wanjian mountain is now unstoppable in the entire Yeazhu." That's right. Sun Qinyang nodded, her heart was calm, and she was even a little happy. In this way, no one should notice that he is no longer Jian Tianming, right? I'm a little tired. The elders can handle this matter by their own. After a while, I will announce to Yeazhu that I, Jian Tianming, will ascend to the position of the master of Wanjian mountain. After Sun Qinyang finished speaking, she walked towards the hilt of the sword. She was not interested in what Jianyi had told her before, that he could refine the sacred objects of Wanjian mountain. The teleportation array had some clues. Sun Qinyang just wanted to recover her spiritual power as soon as possible, and then go to the forbidden area to activate the array. No matter what Wanjian mountain is, it has nothing to do with her. In Yunzhou, in Lingjian sect, Mengwei found Ergu. I'm going to Chuzhu. She looked at Ergu and said seriously. Zhou became the new leader of Lingjian sect, and Ergu was responsible for the main affairs of the sect. Because Zhou needs to practice constantly, otherwise with her strength, she can't deal with other things. It's not enough for Yulin alone. Ergu frowned and remained silent. After a long while, he said, "Are you in the qi refining stage?" Mengwei smiled and said, "Yes, I have understood a little, but all my strength now is relying on the spiritual fire. If I want to make another breakthrough, I can only strengthen the spiritual fire." As she spoke, she stretched out a finger, and a flame emerged from her finger. "Go through Yeazhu." Ergu relaxed his brows, she knew why Mengwei wanted to go to Chuzhu. Because the Chuzhu ground fire and magma can enhance the spiritual fire. I don't want to go to Yeazhu. I don't know what the current situation in Yeazhu is. I plan to go by water. No. Ergu was shocked and said, there are so many monsters in the sea. And if we go to Chuzhu, it will take at least a year or two. How can we get there? Mengwei smiled and said, it will take at least half a year to get to the Hongduan mountains with my strength. And with my level, I can still protect myself in Yunzhou, but what about Yeazhu? So this is the only way for me to go to Chuzhu. Looking at the determination in Mengwei's smile, Ergu sighed, took out the dark red knife, and handed it back. With this magic weapon, your safety is more or less guaranteed. Mengwei shook his head and said, the magic formula I am practicing now is completely different, all relying on this spiritual fire. This knife is useless to me, but it is more likely to attract the covetousness of some foundation building or even Jindan forming cultivators. What's more, I, Mengwei, will never take back what I give away. Then, Ergu knew Mengwei's temperament, lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then took out a porcelain bottle from his storage bag. This is the disguise pill, yes, it was given by Ye Xianming at that time. This time Mengwei was not polite and took it over. Ergu also showed an honest smile, and said, I will go to Brother Yu to get something for you on the road. You wait here. After speaking, he turned and walked towards Yu Yulin's residence. After seeing Ergu's figure disappear, Mengwei's smile became even wider, and then he walked down the mountain without looking back. When she followed Sun Suanhua to escape from Lingjian sect, she naturally remembered the way out of the sect. She also knew that if Ergu went to get the elixir, there would definitely be spirit stones. Lingjian sect was not rich to begin with, and considering her friendship with Ergu, she would probably give a lot. Mengwei felt that she didn't need it. Soon, she left the mountain gate, bought a Dan horse in the town at the foot of the mountain, rode it, and headed south. The road was long, the mountains were high and the water was long. She didn't know if she could survive to Chuzhu, so she decided to go to Huangshi mountain to take a look before leaving. Zuyun drove the flying boat and had reached the outskirts of the 10,000 mountains, but did not stop, but continued to fly into the mountains. There were less than 100 spirit stones left, and Zuyun flew all the way to the valley where the city guard was killed at that time, and then stopped. After some time, the broken limbs on the ground were still there, and Zuyun was immediately happy. This showed that there were no monsters nearby. Otherwise, such a thick bloody smell will definitely attract monsters to eat them up. He did not land directly in the valley, but stood on the top of the low hill on the west side. He looked back and saw that there was still no one chasing him in the air. He moved his mind and entered the Dao glass mirror. After taking out the 10,000 arrays order, he immediately turned back. Humph, I'll see if this can attract you. Zuyun stuffed the 10,000 arrays order into his arms, swallowed a breath-retaining pill, controlled his breath to the initial stage of foundation building, and held his breath as much as possible before running towards the depths of the mountain with the Changshengju. He did not use spiritual power. He was afraid of causing some monsters to move. After all, the scale of the beast tide here is too terrifying. Nearly 100 miles behind him, a group of Jindan stage people looked solemn. They were a little suspicious that the person who brought the array disc back from Tangtiangang had brought the wrong message. How dare a small foundation building stage person come to the 10,000 mountains? But all the way to chase, there was no news from the other team, which also meant that they did not catch up with Zuyun. This made them a little irritated. The 10,000 mountains are ahead. Does this kid really dare to go in? The Jindan stage person holding the array disc frowned and said, whether you dare or not, you have to chase him, and go back as soon as possible after finding him, otherwise the demonic power in you and me will be uncontrollable. Alas, I don't want to live a life controlled by others anymore. We are the worst Jindan stage in history, right? Hold on for a while, as long as we finish Tang Tiangong's business, we may be free again. Then we can break through Yuanying in Peeper Realm, and then come to settle accounts with Tang Tiangang. While they were complaining and talking about this and that, Tang Tiangong's urgent voice suddenly sounded in the array. Quick, quick. That kid is in the 10,000 mountains, and his speed has slowed down a lot. He is heading deep into the mountains, all the way to the west. Everyone was stunned and looked at the array in disbelief. Didn't they say before that only within 1,000 miles can they communicate with each other? How come Tang Tiangang can communicate thousands of miles away? This is their ignorance. How high is Tang Tiangong's attainment in array? Just like the array disk made by Tang Zhuyang at the beginning, it can transmit sound from Yunzhou to Zhuyang Tower. A line apart is like a mountain apart. You guys chase after him quickly, and this city lord will notify another team to come here to join you. After that, Tang Tiangong's voice disappeared, and there was no movement in the array disk. Everyone looked at each other. Listening to Tang Tiangong's anxious tone, it didn't seem fake. Besides, instead of being clueless all the way, it's better to listen to Tang Tiangang. A group of people quickly cheered up and flew quickly to the west. At the same time, in the Master Hall of Liwo Sect, another team has already occupied this place. Under the hall, the elders of Liwo Sect trembled. Coming here, they used force to force Liwo Sect to hand over the person. Unfortunately, no one knew Zuyun. They only knew that Li Mo appeared outside the sect at that time and sent Li Ju to chase him. Just at this time, Tang Tiangong's voice rang. Go to Shiwen Mountain and join the other team. Go at full speed, don't slack off. A very abrupt voice came from the array, and everyone was stunned. Then, these Jindan stage looked at each other, and flew straight into the sky, crashing through the roof of the Master's Hall and flying away, leaving only a group of elders from the Liwo sect, looking at each other in bewilderment. Who are these people? Where is he coming from? Are they going to Shiwen Mountain? After notifying the two teams of Jindan stage of the news, Tang Tiangang held his chin and thought quietly. He was still thinking about the sudden appearance of the Wanzan order. In front of him, there were 3 light spots flashing continuously. One of them was slowly moving towards the west. This was the Wanzan order on Zuyun. The other 2 spots were naturally the 2 teams of pursuers. This place is thousands of miles away from the Shiwen Mountains. How long has it been since he appeared in the Shiwen Mountains? This kid not only has a magic weapon that can hide the 10,000 array order, but also a magic weapon with extremely fast flying speed. According to the city guard who came to report the news earlier, he first brought a kid with him, which was a golden flying boat style. Could this kid be from Wanjian Mountain? Gradually, Tang Tiangang frowned. At the same time, a murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Originally, he thought of just capturing Zuyun alive, and then tortured him to dig out all the secrets from him. But at this time, he felt that killing Zuyun would be a bargain for him. What method should I think of to make Wanjian Mountain lose face? He knew that the flying boat was a magic weapon unique to the elders in the Jindan period, so he determined that Zuyun was either the beloved disciple of an elder of Wanjian Mountain, or the direct descendant of Wanjian Mountain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 289. Zuyun didn't know that the moment he took out the 10,000 formation order, Tang Tiangang discovered his whereabouts. He just felt that since he was so far away from Xian City, even if Tang Tiangang had any tricks, he wouldn't be able to pull them off, right? Of course, what he didn't expect was that Tang Tiangang gave these magic tools that could communicate and transmit sounds during the pill formation period, so that they could keep track of Zuyun's movements at any time. At this time, he had entered the dense forest of the valley. At the top, there are towering trees. The green leaves are so thick that no sunlight can get through. The air is filled with the smell of moisture and corruption. Because under my feet, there was an unknown thickness of dead leaves piled up. From time to time, after Zuyun runs by, some insects, snakes, rats, and ants will be disturbed. Although the footwork of the immortality secret was exquisite, and Zuyun was also very proficient, they could not hold up the dead leaves under their feet and could not bear the weight of his body. But fortunately, although one kick was deep and the other was shallow, it did not affect Zuyun too much. There was no movement except for a slight rustle. Because of this, Zuyun ignored the distance behind him, where those pill-forming stages were already flying at full speed. However, these people were only flying and did not dare to release their spiritual consciousness to search for the monster beasts that were stirring up hundreds of thousands of mountains. In fact, there is no need for spiritual knowledge, because Tang Tiangang communicates with them from time to time, giving them fine-tuned directions, reporting distances, etc. As the distance gradually gets closer, Zuyun finally heard the whistling sound coming from the air. The sound reached the ground, making Zuyun frown. His line of sight was completely blocked by the ancient trees, and he couldn't see whether they were birds, monsters, or the pill-forming stage chasing after him in the sky. Just in case, Zuyun entered the Diwu glass mirror without hesitation. Tang Tiangang, who was in Scarlet Flame City, stood up suddenly and slapped the table beside him. As a result, he had no spiritual power, but his palms turned red. Tang Tiangang was so angry that he swept those tea sets and cups to the ground again. For those guys who failed to accomplish anything but failed more than once, they must have exposed their whereabouts. Instead, they let this kid discover it first, and then hid the 10,000 formation order. Tang Tiangang cursed angrily, kicked over the chair he was sitting on, and then vented a little, roaring at the array, "That kid found you. You losers, you didn't find anyone during the pill formation period, but you did. Let him find you first." All the people in the alchemy stage were stunned when they suddenly heard Tang Tiangong's furious voice. Found someone? So just down there? Before, they knew they were not far from Zuyun. But because of these ancient trees, and thinking about Tang Tiangong's guidance, I relaxed my mind. Unexpectedly, Zuyun was too cautious and hid directly in the Diwu glass mirror. Since we haven't encountered any monsters, then we must have spiritual knowledge. With that said, a group of people immediately split up and scanned their spiritual consciousness. But soon, they all frowned. There was no sign of anyone at all. There are even no traces on these dead leaves. This is the magical effect of the longevity secret. Go down and see if this kid used the earth escape technique to run underground. The person who said this was the person who witnessed Zuyun escaping from under his nose. Are you kidding me? The soil here is under so many feet. Even if he wants to escape from the earth, he can't escape through these dead leaves, right? Someone else refuted his statement. I think so. Could it be that Tang Tiangang made a mistake? Even though he is so far away, even if he is very capable, he cannot be so accurate. That's right, even if that kid could escape, he would at least have to pry open these dead leaves. But look, where are the dead leaves that have been pried open? A group of people talking in a few words. Little did he know, all the information reached Tang Tiangong's ears through the formation disc. Tang Tiangong's expression became increasingly gloomy. He did not tell these people that the two teams needed to infuse spiritual power into the array to communicate with each other. But he could directly hear the words of these people. Damn, you trash. You dare to speak ill of the city lord. Even if you get things done this time, this city lord will not let you go. When the time comes, I will let you turn into monsters, and then let you help me take revenge. GGG. After laughing like crazy for a while, Tang Tiangang suddenly put away his smile, and then informed everyone, the location I left for that boy has disappeared. You guys should look for it separately. He will definitely not be able to escape. Tang Tiangang guessed that Zhu Yun might have taken the 10,000 formation orders into the space, and he himself discovered these people chasing them in advance, so he could use the flying boat to escape secretly. Without the positioning of the 10,000 formation orders, he had no way to find Zhu Yun, so he could only expand the search range for these pill-forming periods. As for whether he would die if he acted alone, he didn't care at all. In other words, even if these people were all dead, they would not be as good as Zhu Yun. Tang Tiangang looked like a normal person. In fact, he has long been controlled by his inner demon. And his inner demons were transformed by his desire for revenge. The way he can take revenge is through formation. On the formation path, he will appear like a person who pursues becoming stronger. So before Zhu Yun returned the solution to the formation, he simply ignored the life and death of those people. Zhu Yun guessed right, he actually wanted to use these monks as food for the monsters. Once these monsters get used to it, he can set up a large formation at any time, trap these monsters in it, and then use it for his own use. There are even cultivators' flesh and blood to cultivate the beast's instincts. In his original plan, he wanted to use the teleportation array to suddenly teleport these monsters into the Wanjian mountain and let them avenge him. That's why he urgently asked Zhu Yun to enter the demon refining tower to help him find the teleportation array. But when he found out that Zhu Yun might have the space treasure, he immediately felt that this would make it easier for him to complete his revenge than the teleportation array. Then Zhu Yun's value would be gone. He practiced the Dao of Arrays, from liking the Dao of Arrays to pursuing immortality through the Dao of Arrays, and then turned the Dao of Arrays into a means of revenge. Unknowingly, even Tang Tiangang himself didn't know what he had become. We must find this kid. Tang Tiangang roared fiercely, and his voice kept echoing in the empty city lord's mansion. It's impossible to be transmitted outside. At this time, in the Dao glass mirror, Zhu Yun frowned, not because he didn't expect these Jindan stage to catch up so quickly. But he had not thought of leaving the 10,000 array order behind. Now, it was obvious that the 10,000 array order had located these Jindan stage cultivators. This showed that these Jindan stage cultivators had always known their approximate location. Too fast, however, Tang Tiangang seemed to have said before that there was no one to trust. Can this be used? Zhu Yun did not know what would happen if these Jindan stage cultivators could not find him, so he simply began to recall some of the conversations he had had with Tang Tiangang, hoping to get some useful information from them. This was the first point he wrote down. Tang Tiangang did not trust these people. The second point, he remembered the 5 elements exorcist array. Because Tang Tiangang said that the 5 elements exorcist array was originally developed to prevent cultivators who practiced the 10,000 demons technique from becoming demons. As long as they were normal people, no one wanted to become a demon. And the reason for practicing the 10,000 demons technique was also a helpless gamble. This can also be seen as a means for Tang Tiangang to control people for his own use. So, would these people be ordered to chase after him for this reason? After thinking a lot, Zhu Yun did not find any other points that could be used, so he simply remembered himself. It seems that all means of escape are not suitable here. He practiced 3 of the 5 elements escape techniques, leaving only the wood escape technique and gold escape technique, which he thought were the least practical. Wait, wood escape technique? Zhu Yun's eyes lit up. There are towering ancient trees here, I wonder if there is a place where the wood escape technique can be used. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun quickly took the 5 elements escape technique off the stone shelf. Before turning to the page of the wood escape technique, Zhu Yun was still thinking that Tang Zhuyang told him that this was a technique he found from the Peepa realm. Indeed, Zhu Yun had seen many escape techniques in the entire Yao realm, but he had never seen this kind of escape technique. Maybe it really works. Zuyun collected his thoughts and began to practice the wood escape technique. It was a little different from the escape techniques he practiced before. The first level of the wood escape technique is to escape into the tree and merge with the tree. This is similar to other escape techniques. But the second level is the beginning of the difference. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 290. You can run fast by turning into a tree. Zuyun was very puzzled. According to the description of the technique, after the second layer is integrated with the tree, it can control the tree to walk anywhere. Unless the tree is completely destroyed. Otherwise, the body will not appear. Zuyun felt that he was amused. A small tree may not be able to accommodate his body. But can a big tree walk fast? The larger the trees, the more they appear in dense forests. How to go here? Aren't you afraid of tripping over tree roots? Zuyun shook his head. It seemed that the method of escaping the pursuit of these people through the wood escape technique was no longer available. But at this time, he was bored and idle, so he decided to start practicing. Who knows if it can be used in the future? Become a tree man? It's too funny. I wonder what the senior who created this technique was thinking in his mind at the time. Shaking his head, Zuyun started practicing from the first level. It took several days to memorize the two-level formulas proficiently. But he couldn't test it. Not to mention that there are no trees in the mirror space. Not even in the pasture. I have practiced 4 types of 5 elements escape technique, so I might as well practice the last one. I wonder if this will allow me to hide in gold. Zuyun smiled and muttered to himself, and then turned to the golden escape technique. It was an eye-opener for him again. Because the golden escape Jew is even more outrageous than the wood escape Jew. When he first got the 5 elements escape technique, Zuyun didn't read it carefully. He just glanced at it casually and was immediately persuaded to leave. Because he found it incomprehensible. But at this time, he took another look and couldn't understand it even more. The first level of the golden escape technique turned into a piece of metal or first. In other words, this is not an escape technique, but a disguise technique. As for the second level, Zuyun almost burst into tears laughing. It actually turned into a metal spiritual creature. All things in heaven and earth can become spirits. As Ye Yang said, all plants, trees, monsters and beasts can become immortals. It is the same reason. As long as you cultivate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and use it for yourself, you can become a spirit. In fact, the same is true for monsters. It's just because they absorbed spiritual power and transformed it into demon power, and then opposed the human race, that they were called demons. To distinguish this, in my opinion, this second layer is not as practical as the first layer. At least the first layer is well disguised and will not be discovered. But if it turns into a metal spirit, I am afraid it will attract more arrests. Zuyun couldn't laugh or cry. He had heard Sun Qiniang say before that Jian Tianming used a lot of metal spirits to cultivate her golden spirit roots in the early years. Later, it turned into ice spirit root, which was caused by taking an extremely rare ice elixir. It was also at the critical point of breaking through, so it inexplicably turned into ice spirit root. Therefore, the top management of Wanjian Mountain all know that Jian Tianming is the ice spiritual root. Other than that, only a few people know about it. Most of the rumors about Jian Tianming are mainly based on golden spiritual roots. Forget it, I'm bored anyway, so just practice. Zuyun started to practice the golden escape technique based on the idea of having the 5 elements complete. After a few more days, I finally mastered it. You can give this a try. Maybe you can scare Zhao Kamang and the others later. Zuyun was not in a hurry to go out, but recited a mantra silently. Suddenly, he felt that his body was extremely heavy, and at the same time, The chaotic spiritual power in his dantian quickly transformed into golden spiritual power and filled his whole body. It's so heavy. Why does it feel like you're carrying a mountain on your back? Zuyun let go of his spiritual consciousness to observe himself, and then he was surprised to find that he had turned into a piece of refined iron ore. If he hadn't known that there was no concentrated iron ore here, he wouldn't have been able to tell that it was changed by humans. Isn't this amazing? Zuyun couldn't help but lie on the ground, exclaiming in his heart. Although it was a bit unbelievable, he had to say that the person who created this technique was really powerful. I don't know why Tang Zhuyang didn't practice at that time. With this technique, who wants to practice his turtle breathing sutra? This is not much better than being a turtle. With a thought in his mind, another wave of spiritual power surged in Zuyun's body. In an instant, he who was extremely heavy immediately became as light as a feather. Zuyun lowered his head and looked at his feet, but they were not even touching the ground. His whole body seemed to be floating. In my mind, I couldn't help but think of the ghost stories my father told me when I was a child. All ghosts float like this. Ha, this second level of the golden escape technique is as good as the ghost seeing technique. Zuyun stretched out his hand and looked at it. The color was exactly the same as the refined iron ore, and it was a qualified refined iron spirit. The hand also has an outline, but the 5 fingers are unclear, and at the edge of the outline, golden spiritual power is constantly surging. This place is too small. Let's go to the pasture and see if the iron spirits can fly fast. Zuyun floated towards the wooden house on the ranch, and then with a thought, he entered the ranch space. With a little bit of spiritual power, the speed suddenly increased. It was actually much faster than him using the chaos art to drive the immortality art with all his strength. That's right. Originally, my immortality technique was not as fast as the flying speed in the same realm. If I had this escape technique, it would be even better than the immortality technique. The key is, I can turn into a piece of metal ore at any time. Zuyun was overjoyed and recited the first level of formula silently in his heart. He felt his body suddenly stagnated, and there was a muffled sound. His whole body turned into a piece of metal ore and hit the grass heavily. Hey, that's weird, why isn't it iron ore this time? Zuyun released his spiritual consciousness and found that this time it was different from what he had become in the cave. Is this a chalcedony mine? After frowning for a long time, Zuyun was not very sure. Chalcedony is an extremely rare mineral. The name is chalcedony, but it actually has nothing to do with jade. It's just that the whole body is green. Although it is rare, it is not widely used. Sun Suanhua once said that chalcedony is usually only used for decoration. There are only rich people who can afford it. Don't engage in such flashy things when you are in the chi refining period like him. Zuyun was very surprised, and he couldn't help but have doubts about the first level of the golden escape technique. If I was running for my life in a place full of loess, I would use this golden escape technique. The result was chalcedony. Any normal person would collect the ore first and then find someone else. After all, chalcedony as big as my own is hard to find. Zuyun immediately felt that the golden escape technique was a bit useless, and his excitement also dissipated a lot. Reciting the second level formula silently, Zuyun thought he would transform into a black fine iron spirit again. Unexpectedly, he turned into a green chalcedony spirit. Covered in green, Zuyun felt a lump in his throat and couldn't curse out. He looked at his hands and then around. He felt something was wrong again. It seems that my color blends in with the surroundings. Exactly the same color. You don't know it by looking at it? After taking a closer look, Zuyun discovered that the grass on the pasture was very similar to chalcedony. Protective color? These 3 words immediately appeared in Zuyun's mind. Among the monsters, many are born with the ability to change color according to the color of the environment. This is a skill inherited from blood. he had seen a lot of them in Sun Suanhua's books. This is called protective coloration in the book, but it is usually only used in the larval stage or when encountering strong enemies. Zuyun murmured, "No wonder it's called escape technique. If you can't fight and run away, you don't have enough strength. If you can't run away, you will become, senior, I really have you. If I have a chance to see you, I must ask, Changsheng, did you also create the secret formula?" After having this conjecture, Zuyun decided to give it a try. But there are only two places in the ranch with different environments. One place was a hole created when the self-explosion array was tested at that time. The hole was filled with dust. The other place is the lake. The lake water is rich in spiritual power and has a blue color. Zuyun decided to scare Zhao Kamang and Sanggu first, and then jump into the lake to see if he could turn into a blue metal spirit. After turning into a spirit body, Zuyun quickly ran towards that direction. Thanks to his feet not touching the ground, Zuyun didn't make a sound at all, which made him very satisfied, and he had one of the elements to escape. Soon, he was flying up the low hill. Seeing Zhao Kamang lying by the water, the three dogs drinking water, and the red candle beast sleeping soundly, Zuyun showed a smirk, and then turned into a chalcedony stone. Boom! A muffled sound startled them. Leveraging the slope of the low hill, the chalcedony stone that Zuyun transformed rolled down slowly. Sanggu stared, his tongue still hanging on his lips, dripping with something he didn't know whether it was spiritual spring or saliva. Zhao Kamang was more alert and took several steps back toward the water. After all, he is demonizing a marine monster like Xianxia. Only in the water can he feel safe. As for the red candle beast, it jumped up from the ground, its eyes were blank, and it had no idea what was happening. Until, Zuyun rolled down to the water's edge, motionless. He was secretly amused in his heart, waiting for them to get closer and then transforming into a spirit to scare them. But who knows? He didn't scare anyone, but he was scared by Sanggu and Zhao Kamang. Before he could calm down, the red candle beast shocked him even more.